I am Delea, 32 years old, and I never imagined I would walk away from my entire life overnight. But when my father slammed his fist on the table and demanded $350,000 to fix my sister Amanda's latest disaster, something inside me finally broke. Years of being the family's fixer, the responsible daughter, the endless bailout fund. His words still echo in my mind. I need the money tomorrow. No delays. I smiled and simply replied, "Okay." He had no idea what that truly meant. Before I go deeper into this story, leave a comment and let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever had to make a difficult decision that changed everything. Trust me, what happened next will make you question everything about family obligation. To understand why I disappeared that night, you need to know about my family. My father, John, built a moderately successful real estate business through sheer willpower and an uncompromising personality. He ran our family the same way he ran his company, with absolute authority and the expectation of immediate obedience. My mother, Susan, was his perfect counterpart, the eternal peacekeeper who softened his rough edges with gentle words and quiet submission. Then there was my younger sister, Amanda, 3 years younger than me and worlds apart when it came to responsibility. While I earned straight A's and worked part-time jobs since I was 16, Amanda drifted through life on charm and theatrics. She failed classes, but still managed to get praised for trying. She crashed cars and got new ones. She quit jobs when they became stressful and always landed on her feet, usually with financial help from our parents. "Amanda is more sensitive than you," my mother would say whenever I questioned the double standard. "You're the strong one, Delea. You can handle things." And I did handle things. I handled working 30 hours a week while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. I handled applying for every scholarship possible so I could afford college without asking my parents for money, even though they paid Amanda's tuition in full when she randomly decided to study fashion design. Our college years were night and day. While I juggled multiple jobs and internships, Amanda filled social media with party photos and spring break trips. I lived in a cramped apartment with 3 roommates to save money. She lived in a cute downtown studio paid for by our parents. When I graduated with honors in finance, my parents came but left early because Amanda had an emergency. Her 2-week boyfriend broke up with her. I built my career methodically at an investment firm, starting as an analyst and working my way up to senior advisor through consistent performance and countless late nights. By 29, I had saved enough for a down payment on a modest but beautiful 2-bedroom home in a good neighborhood. That house meant everything to me. Every extra shift, every vacation I skipped, every dollar I saved instead of spent. My relationship with Amanda grew worse as we entered our late 20s. While I became financially independent, her lifestyle continued to be funded by our parents, and more by me. The first major bailout came 4 years ago when Amanda decided to launch an online clothing boutique. She needed $15,000 for inventory, but had maxed out her credit cards and been denied a loan due to bad credit. My father called, not to ask, but to tell me to help your sister. I transferred the money the next day and created a payment plan Amanda followed for exactly 2 months before the excuses began. The business folded within a year. The second incident involved Amanda dating a wealthy man who turned out to be married. After a messy public confrontation with his wife, Amanda was sued for property damage and emotional distress. Another $20,000 of my savings disappeared to settle it quietly. The third time, just 6 months ago, involved Amanda's luxury apartment lease she could no longer afford after quitting her job at a fashion magazine because her boss was totally toxic. $35,000 covered her lease termination, unpaid rent, and moving costs. After that third bailout, I had a serious talk with my family. "This is the last time," I said firmly during a tense dinner at my parents' house. "I love Amanda, but I can't keep funding her mistakes. I have my own financial goals." "And what could be more important than helping your sister?" my father asked, his tone making it clear there was only one acceptable answer. "My future," I replied, feeling my hands tremble beneath the table. I've been saving for years to take a sabbatical and travel. That money has a purpose. My mother jumped in with her usual soothing tone. Of course you deserve your trip, sweetheart. Amanda promises this is the last time she'll need help. Right, Amanda? Amanda nodded tearfully, looking convincingly remorseful. I swear, Dee, I'm getting my life together. I already have interviews lined up. I wanted to believe her. A part of me always wanted to believe in the family fantasy, that we supported each other equally, that my sacrifices were appreciated, that things would eventually even out. Life had been going well for me recently. A promotion to senior investment advisor was within reach. I'd been dating Michael, an architect with kind eyes and a calm presence for almost a year. Most importantly, my travel fund was nearly complete. 5 years of careful saving for a dream I'd had since college. A year to explore the world, experience new cultures, and finally put myself first. I even kept a detailed travel journal, planning my itinerary, studying local customs, learning basic phrases in different languages. Thailand would be my first stop, then Vietnam, Japan, and the rest of Southeast Asia before heading to Europe. Every detail was carefully planned as a reward for years of hard work and responsibility. For once, everything in my life seemed to be falling into place. I should have known it wouldn't last. The call came at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. I was reviewing client portfolios when my father's name flashed on my phone. Dia, family meeting tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. sharp. At the house. He barked, without greeting. Dad, I have client meetings all morning, I replied, already feeling the familiar tension in my shoulders. Cancel them. This is family. 8 a.m. The call ended before I could argue. I texted Michael. Family emergency. Meeting tomorrow morning. Already dreading it. His reply came quickly. Want me to come with you? The offer warmed me, but I declined. Michael had only met my family twice, and both times had been uncomfortable. My father dismissed his career as drawing pretty buildings, my mother hovered and apologized for everything, and Amanda flirted with him despite my obvious discomfort. I wasn't ready to expose him to a full family crisis. I arrived at my parents' house at 7:59 the next morning, bracing myself as I walked up the familiar brick pathway. The moment I stepped through the front door, the tension in the air hit me like a physical force. My mother was pacing in the living room, offering me tea I didn't want. My father sat rigid in his leather armchair, his face carved into grim lines. Amanda was curled on the sofa, her eyes red and swollen, releasing dramatic sobs every few seconds. What happened? I asked, staying on my feet, my bag still slung over my shoulder. Your sister has gotten herself into a situation, my father began, his voice controlled but simmering with fury. Tell her. Amanda. Amanda looked up, mascara smeared beneath her eyes. I made a mistake, she whispered, her voice cracking. Just tell me what happened, I said, already feeling my bank account draining. The story came out between sobs and my father's impatient interruptions. Amanda had attempted to launch another boutique, this time a physical store in an upscale shopping district. Denied traditional business loans because of her past failures, she turned to what she called private investors, who were in reality loan sharks charging brutal interest rates. $350,000, my father finally said, staring directly at me. That's what she owes, and they want it within 2 days. The number struck me like a blow. 350,000? Are you serious? What could possibly cost that much? Retail space renovation, premium inventory, marketing campaign. The interest built up fast when I missed the first payment. These are not people you want to owe money to. They've made threats, legal action at minimum, but they implied worse. I looked at my mother, now wringing her hands. Why not go to the police if they're threatening her? And have Amanda's reputation destroyed? Have our family name dragged through the mud? My mother exclaimed. Your father has spent decades building his standing in this community. Of course. The family reputation mattered more than actual safety, or Amanda finally facing consequences. I'm trying to liquidate some assets, but most of my capital is tied up in developments. I can't convert it to cash fast enough. And I can't either. We would never ask if there was any other way, sweetheart. But they weren't asking, not really. The expectation hung in the air, unspoken, but heavy. I was the solution again. What about the business itself, the inventory? I asked, reaching for any alternative. Worthless, he dismissed. The lease is underwater, and the merchandise was mostly on consignment. So there's literally nothing to show for $350,000? Amanda began crying harder. I tried, Dee. I really thought it would work this time.
I had clients interested, but then supply chain issues delayed everything, and the contractors went over budget. I tuned out. It was the same script I had heard for years. Meanwhile, my father watched me, calculating. My mother had moved beside Amanda, rubbing her back in soothing circles. Dilea, my father said at last, his voice shifting to the tone he used while closing business deals. You are in the best position to help. Your investment portfolio is substantial, and you have your travel fund. The mention of my travel fund sent a cold wave through me. I had never told him what I was saving for, only that I had plans. The fact that he knew and still expected me to give it up told me everything. My travel fund would cover maybe half, I said slowly, and it took me 5 years to save. You can travel later, my mother said quickly. Amanda needs help now. Family comes first. Family comes first. The familiar line, always used on me, never applied to me. Why is it always my responsibility to clean up these messes? I asked, a rare spark of defiance rising in me. I've bailed Amanda out 3 times already. I have my own life, my own plans. Plans that can wait, my father said flatly. This is an emergency, Dilea. Amanda's safety could be at risk. I looked at my sister, who had composed herself enough to check her phone between sobs. Did you even try to solve this before coming to me? Bankruptcy, negotiating a payment plan, anything? There's no time for that, my father cut in before Amanda could answer. These people want their money now. And that was when I knew, beyond any doubt, that nothing would ever change. Amanda would continue making disasters, and I would always be expected to sacrifice myself to fix them. The realization settled over me like a heavy blanket, suffocating but also clarifying. Something inside me shifted. I need time to think, I said, reaching for my bag. I can't just liquidate my entire investment portfolio overnight. You have until tomorrow morning, he said. Not a request, a command. As I turned to leave, Amanda finally looked up from her phone. I'm really sorry, Dee, but her eyes held that same entitled expectation I had seen for years. I nodded silently and walked out, their expectations trailing me like a shadow. I didn't reach home before my phone rang again. My father, no doubt, calling to make sure I was already arranging the transfer. Dilea, I expect solutions, not avoidance, he said as soon as I picked up. I'm trying to figure out what's possible. $350,000 isn't pocket change, Dad. I can't just withdraw that on a whim. This isn't a whim. This is your sister's safety, he snapped. I need the money tomorrow. No delays. Dad, be reasonable. Even if I agreed, which I haven't, banks have limits. There are processes. Figure it out, he cut in. You work in finance. Use your connections. I took a slow breath. What about other options? You could take a second mortgage on your house. Amanda could sell her car, her designer wardrobe. He gave a cold laugh. The house is already leveraged for business, and Amanda's things won't make a dent. Then what about a formal loan from a bank with you as co-signer? No time, and a paper trail complicates things. Translation, he didn't want a record of this mess. Image management, as always. Dad, I said carefully, this is my future. We are talking about my entire savings. And what's more important, your vacation or your sister's safety? The manipulation was deliberate, designed to shame me. It's not just a vacation, I said firmly. It's a life plan I've worked toward for years. My entire career has been leading to this sabbatical.
So you can take selfies at tourist traps? He scoffed. Be serious, Dalia. This is a real crisis. His contempt stung more than I wanted to admit. I could help with part of it, I said finally, trying to compromise. Maybe $50,000. You can cover the rest. This is not a negotiation, he said coldly. Your sister needs $350,000 by tomorrow, and you will provide it. And if I can't, or won't, I asked, the words escaping before I could stop them. The silence on the other end of the line was brief, but intense. Then I am not the daughter I raised. Family takes care of family. Dalia, your mother and I have given you everything. We put you through college, supported your career. I almost laughed at the blatant rewriting of history. Dad, I put myself through college with scholarships and jobs. You paid for Amanda's education, not mine. We gave you a roof over your head growing up, food, opportunities. Basic parenting is not a debt I'm required to repay with my entire financial future, I replied, surprising even myself with my boldness. I see how it is, he said coldly. When we need you, suddenly we're not good enough parents. After everything we've done for you, your mother is devastated by your selfishness right now. The emotional manipulation was so transparent, it almost lost its effect. Almost. I need time, I repeated. 24 hours, Dalia, then I expect you at our house with the money, or don't bother coming at all. You will no longer be my daughter. The call ended, and I sat in my car with my hands shaking. The ultimatum echoed in my mind. No longer his daughter. The threat should have shattered me, but instead, I felt an unexpected wave of relief. I finally went inside, dropped my keys on the counter, and sank onto the couch. My phone lit up immediately with texts from my mother. Your father is just stressed, sweetheart. He doesn't mean to be harsh. Amanda is crying again. She feels terrible for putting you in this position. We know it's a lot to ask, but family always comes through for each other. Please call me back. We can figure this out together. The messages continued, switching between guilt and reassurance. I silenced my phone and stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of my family's expectations press down on me like a heavy blanket. Suffocating, but also clarifying. Later that evening, as I researched what liquidating my portfolio would involve, the doorbell rang. My father stood on the porch, his expression firm and unyielding. I thought we could discuss this like adults, I said, pushing past me into the house without waiting to be invited. There's nothing to discuss, I replied, closing the door.
You've made your position clear. He glanced around my living room with critical eyes before turning to face me. I want you to understand the severity of the situation. The people Amanda borrowed from are not playing games. I understand perfectly. Amanda made terrible choices and now expects everyone else to save her, just like always. His face reddened. You've always been jealous of your sister. The accusation was so ridiculous I actually laughed. Jealous of what? Her inability to keep a job? Her growing debt? Her lack of responsibility? Of her spirit, her creativity, the fact that she takes risks while you play everything safe. Those risks appear to be costing $350,000 at the moment, I pointed out. He waved a dismissive hand. Money can be replaced, family cannot. Exactly, which is why it's interesting you're willing to disown me over money, I said. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I need the money tomorrow, no delays. I've already told these people we would have it. The assumption stunned me. He had promised my money without even speaking to me. You had no right to make promises on my behalf, I said, a strange calm settling over me. I had every right. I am your father. That doesn't give you ownership over my finances. It gives me the right to expect support in a family crisis, he shouted, his control finally slipping. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? With selfishness and arguments while your sister could be in danger? I looked at him, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time as an adult. I no longer saw the imposing figure from my childhood. I saw a smaller man, someone who controlled through fear and obligation, rather than respect or love. I will think about it,
I said quietly. Now, please leave. I need to make some calculations. He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded stiffly. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Be at our house with the funds, or don't bother coming at all. After he left, I sat in silence for almost an hour, my thoughts racing. Then, with sudden clarity, I smiled and whispered to the empty room, "Okay." I did not sleep that night, not a single minute. Instead, I sat cross-legged on my bed with 5 years of travel journals spread around me. Detailed itineraries, language notes, cultural research, budgets calculated and recalculated, 5 years of dreams meticulously documented. Tears fell sometimes as I turned the pages, but they were not the tears of someone trapped. They were mourning tears, acknowledging what was ending, accepting what might begin. On the wall across from my bed was a large world map with colorful pins marking my plans: Thailand, Vietnam, Japan, Indonesia, and on across continents. I had imagined this journey so many times, growing, learning, discovering parts of myself that had never been allowed to exist under the weight of my family's demands. Around 3 in the morning, staring at that map, something crystallized inside me, a realization so sharp, it felt physical. I did not owe them my future anymore. The constant burden of being the responsible one, the fixer, had been so normalized I had never questioned it. But now, faced with being asked to give up everything I had worked for, the absurdity of it became impossible to ignore. Amanda would never change as long as she was protected from consequences. My parents would never see me as anything more than a resource as long as I allowed it. This cycle would repeat forever, unless someone ended it. That someone would have to be me. The plan formed with surprising speed and clarity, not an impulsive, emotional reaction, but a deliberate, strategic decision. I would not give them the money. I would not show up for the 9 o'clock ultimatum. I would no longer participate in this dysfunction. I would disappear, not forever, not by burning every bridge, but long enough to establish boundaries that had never existed in my family. I would take the journey I had planned, starting immediately rather than waiting for the original departure date 3 months from now. A steady sense of calm settled over me once the decision was made. I showered, made coffee, and began writing lists with methodical precision: what to pack, what to store, bills to prepay, people to notify. At 7 a.m., I called Michael. His voice was groggy with sleep, but sharpened with concern as I explained the situation. "Your father actually threatened to disown you if you don't give them the money?" he asked, disbelief clear in his tone. "Yes, and the strangest part is how little that threat hurts. It's like it finally gave me permission to choose myself for once." "What are you going to do?" he asked. I took a deep breath. "I'm going to start my trip today. I can't be here for their 9 o'clock deadline because I know they'll wear me down eventually. I need to be gone." There was a pause, and for a moment I worried he would try to talk me out of it, tell me I was overreacting. Instead, "Where are you going first?" "Thailand, Bangkok. It was always going to be my first stop." "Do you want company?" he asked simply. The offer touched me deeply. "Not yet. I need to do this part alone, I think, to prove to myself that I can. But maybe you could meet me somewhere along the way, once I found my footing. Just tell me when and where. I've got vacation time saved up. And Dalia, I'm proud of you. This is incredibly brave." His support brought fresh tears to my eyes. "Thank you. That means everything right now." After we hung up, I moved with renewed purpose. I called my boss, explained I needed emergency personal leave, and was relieved when she was understanding. I had always been a reliable employee, never taking sick days and volunteering for holiday shifts when needed. She granted me 3 months of unpaid leave with the possibility of extension. Next, I went to the bank and withdrew a significant portion of my savings, purposely not all of it. enough for extended travel while leaving some invested for my eventual return. I was not burning every bridge behind me, just creating necessary distance. I booked a one-way ticket to Bangkok, departing that evening.
The travel agent found me a last-minute seat, and the confirmation email brought a rush of terror and exhilaration. I paid 6 months' rent in advance on my house, arranged for my neighbor to collect my mail, and packed only what would fit in a backpack and small suitcase. The essentials, the irreplaceables, photos, journals, a few sentimental keepsakes. Everything else could be replaced or left behind. The final task was perhaps the most important. I found a decorative box I had received as a gift years ago, lined it with tissue paper, and began filling it with documentation. A ledger of every loan I had given Amanda over the years, totaling nearly $70,000. Copies of emails and texts promising repayment that never came. A collection of IOUs written in her handwriting, ones she likely didn't even remember signing. Then I wrote a letter. It took 3 attempts to get the tone right. Not angry, but firm. Not vindictive, but honest. I explained why I could no longer continue in the role assigned to me. I expressed love despite necessary distance. I documented the pattern of exploitation without resorting to accusation. I did not reveal my destination, but I left open the possibility of future contact once boundaries were respected. I signed it simply, Delia, instead of the usual love Delia that had ended every message to my family since childhood. A small but meaningful shift. The box was wrapped carefully with a simple ribbon, a final gift to a family that had taken so much. I placed my spare house key on top. At 4 p.m., my phone rang again. My father. "I expect to see you at 9 tomorrow. With the money," he said, without a greeting. I took a deep breath and replied with complete calm, "Okay." I heard the surprise in his brief silence, followed by satisfaction. "Good. Your mother will make breakfast." "Sounds nice," I said, my voice betraying none of my intentions. After hanging up, I immediately turned off my phone, removed the SIM card, and slid both into a drawer. I would get a new phone and number in Thailand. A clean break. The taxi arrived at 5. I looked back at my house one last time, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Sadness, yes. Fear, absolutely. But beneath it all was a sense of liberation so powerful it was nearly dizzying. In the taxi, I allowed myself a small smile. For the first time in my adult life, I had chosen myself. The morning light cast long shadows across my living room as I made my final preparations. Having stayed awake all night, I moved with the strange clarity that comes from exhaustion mixed with absolute conviction. Every item I packed had been thoughtfully chosen, every document secured, every loose end tied as neatly as possible. I had already withdrawn my savings, converting some to traveler's checks and prepaid international cards, the rest distributed across accounts accessible worldwide. Not my entire savings, but enough to live abroad for at least a year, modestly but comfortably, just as I had planned. The practical arrangements had been surprisingly simple. 6 months of rent prepaid to my landlord, who seemed confused but pleased by the unexpected windfall, utilities set to auto-pay, my plants given to neighbors, mail forwarding arranged. I packed light. 2 weeks of versatile clothing, essential toiletries, important documents sealed in waterproof pouches, basic first aid supplies, and my most treasured possessions, a small box of photos and the journals detailing my travel plans. Everything fit into one backpack and a small rolling suitcase, exactly as I had envisioned through years of reading travel blogs and minimalist packing guides. What remained was the gift for my family, the box I had prepared the night before. I set it on the coffee table, centered perfectly, the house key resting on top. Inside was the documentation of years of financial support given to Amanda, the unfulfilled promises of repayment, and my letter explaining my decision.
The letter had been the hardest part. How to express years of complex emotion without bitterness. How to establish boundaries without severing ties completely. I had rewritten it multiple times, finally settling on a version that felt true to my feelings, while still leaving room for possible reconciliations someday under healthier terms. The letter began with simple facts. I have given Amanda $73,426 over the past 5 years. I have received $2,100 in repayment. I have been told each time that it would be the last time my help was needed. I cannot and will not provide $350,000 to cover this latest crisis. The middle sections detailed the pattern of family dynamics, my repeated attempts to establish boundaries, and the consistent dismissal of my own needs and goals. It concluded with my decision. I am taking the journey I have planned for 5 years. I need time away from this pattern that hurts all of us in different ways. Amanda needs to face consequences to grow. You need to recognize that shielding her from those consequences has only enabled destructive behavior. I need to discover who I am outside the role of family fixer. I love you, but I cannot continue like this. I will be in touch when I am ready. I did not specify where I was going or for how long. That uncertainty was necessary protection against my father's controlling tendencies and my own potential weakness if faced with enough emotional manipulation. I walked through my home one final time, a space that represented so much hard work and independence, my first real achievement as an adult, purchased with my own money, decorated to my own taste. I ran my fingers along the bookshelves, straightened a photo frame, adjusted a throw pillow. Small, meaningless gestures of farewell. At 8:15, 45 minutes before I was expected at my parents' house with the money, my phone rang. My father. "Are you on your way?" No greeting, no pleasantries. "Everything is being taken care of," I replied, the careful phrasing technically true while revealing nothing. "Good. Your mother is making those blueberry pancakes you like." The attempt at normality, pretending this was just a regular family breakfast rather than financial extortion, almost made me laugh. "I will handle everything, Dad," I said, the double meaning clear only to me. "See you soon." He hung up without waiting for my response. I turned off my phone immediately after, a symbolic act that felt surprisingly powerful. The ability to simply disconnect, to choose silence over the constant barrage of demands and guilt. Outside, the taxi arrived precisely on schedule. The driver helped load my luggage, commenting on how lightly I was traveling, assuming I was taking a short business trip. I smiled without correcting him and took a last look at my house before closing the door, testing the lock. I placed the box with the letter carefully on the welcome mat, positioned where it could not be missed. The ride to the airport passed in contemplative silence. The familiar streets of my neighborhood, then the highway, then the approach to departures. Signs for international flights. Each mile increased the distance between the old me and whoever I might become. In the airport, I moved through check-in with mechanical efficiency. Yes, one-way ticket, no return flight yet.
Passport, boarding pass, security screening, the practiced choreography of modern travel carrying me forward. Sitting at the gate, I finally allowed myself to fully process what I was doing. Leaving behind my job, temporarily. My home, maintained. My relationship, paused, not ended. And my family, complicated. Was I overreacting? The doubt crept in as the boarding process began. $350,000 was an enormous sum, but was it worth this dramatic exit? Then I remembered my father's dismissive tone when discussing my dreams, the casual way he expected me to surrender 5 years of planning and saving, the complete absence of gratitude for past help, the threat of disowning me for having boundaries, the years of enabling Amanda's irresponsibility while demanding perfect responsibility from me. No, this was not an overreaction.
This was long overdue self-preservation. My seat was by the window, offering a view of the fading American landscape as we took off. As the plane gained altitude, I imagined my father arriving at my house, expecting to find me with a check in hand, perhaps contrite for my earlier resistance, finding instead a locked door and a box of truths never before assembled so clearly. I could picture his face as he read the letter. The initial anger, the sputtering indignation, the disbelief that I had actually defied him, the slow realization that his control had limits. Somewhere over the Pacific, I sent a single text to Michael from the airplane Wi-Fi, using my tablet, avoiding turning on my phone. I did it. I am free. His response came minutes later. Safe travels. The world is waiting for you. So am I. Whenever you are ready. I leaned back against the headrest, closed my eyes, and for the first time in days, I slept peacefully. 9 a.m. arrived at my abandoned house with predictable results. My father, punctual to a fault, pulled into the driveway expecting to find me waiting with the money, perhaps apologetic for my earlier reluctance. Instead, he found a locked door, my car conspicuously absent, and a box placed precisely at the center of the welcome mat. I learned the details of what happened next from Michael, who heard from a mutual friend living 2 houses down from me. According to this neighbor, my father knocked repeatedly, then tried calling my phone, growing visibly agitated when it went straight to voicemail. Eventually, he noticed the box with the key on top, opened it there on the porch, and began reading the contents. His face reportedly transformed from annoyance to disbelief to pure rage. He shouted my name loud enough to draw attention from people walking their dogs. He slammed his fist against my front door, causing the decorative wreath to fall to the ground. "She cannot do this," he yelled to no one in particular. "She cannot just leave." But I had done exactly that. I was already thousands of miles away, my plane crossing the international dateline as he stood fuming on my porch. My father used the key to enter my house, presumably searching for clues to my whereabouts, or perhaps hoping to find me hiding inside. He emerged 20 minutes later, face flushed, clutching the box and my letter. The emergency family meeting that followed must have been chaotic. My mother called Michael in tears, asking if he knew where I was, if I had mentioned any crazy plans. He truthfully told her I knew she needed space and respected my decision, but offered no details about my location. "She abandoned her family," my mother sobbed. "How could she be so selfish when Amanda needs her?" Michael, to his eternal credit, replied simply, "Maybe the question should be why Delia felt she had no choice but to leave." Their reaction followed predictable patterns. My father raged and threatened to report me missing to the police, though as a 32-year-old adult who had left a clear explanation, there was nothing to report. My mother alternated between tears and increasingly desperate attempts to locate me. Amanda, according to Michael, seemed more confused than anything, genuinely baffled that I had refused to rescue her yet again. The deadline for Amanda's debt came and went. What happened next was necessary, though difficult. Without my financial rescue, my father was forced to liquidate 2 investment properties he had been holding for appreciation. The rushed, below-market sale covered most, but not all the debt. The remainder came from my parents' retirement savings, a fact Michael reported with no small amount of satisfaction. "They had the resources all along," he told me during one of our weekly secure email exchanges. "They just preferred to use yours instead." My first days in Bangkok were a strange mixture of exhilaration and guilt. The vibrant chaos of the city provided constant distraction, the humid heat and unfamiliar sounds creating a sensory experience so different from home that it was impossible to dwell too much on what I had left behind. I stayed in a modest but clean hotel in a neighborhood away from the main tourist areas, eating street food, visiting temples, and slowly adjusting to the reality of what I had done. Each morning brought momentary panic, followed by growing confidence. I was managing. I was surviving.
Eventually, I began to believe I might actually thrive. I established routines, morning tea at a local shop where the owner gradually began recognizing me and practicing his English,
Afternoons exploring different districts of the sprawling city, evenings writing in my journal and processing the complex emotions that surfaced in quiet moments. The guilt never disappeared entirely, but it evolved into something more nuanced than simple regret. I recognized it as the conditioned response of someone trained since childhood to put others' needs first, to see personal boundaries as selfishness. With distance, I could finally examine these patterns objectively. After 3 weeks, I sent my first email to Michael, using a secure account created specifically for our communications. I shared practical details, my safe arrival, my accommodations, my initial impressions of Thailand. I asked about his life and work, careful to avoid direct questions about my family that might put him in an awkward position. His response came within hours, warm and supportive without pressure. He shared news of his latest architectural project, mentioned a book he was reading that reminded me of me, and only at the end offered limited information about my family. "Your parents came by my apartment looking for you last week. I told them what I knew, which is that you are safe and needed space. Your father made some threats about legal action for hiding you, but obviously that went nowhere since you are an adult who left voluntarily. Amanda has apparently taken a job at a department store, entry-level retail. Your mother mentioned it as if it were a tragedy, but it sounds like a positive step to me." The news about Amanda surprised me. She had always considered retail work beneath her, despite her interest in fashion. Perhaps necessity was finally pushing her toward responsibility. Over the following months, I settled into a nomadic rhythm, moving through Thailand as originally planned, then to Vietnam and Cambodia, each destination on my meticulously researched itinerary. I found temporary work teaching English to supplement my savings, created a travel blog under a pseudonym that gradually gained a small following, and experienced the growth I had always hoped this journey would provide. Michael and I continued our correspondence, his updates about home carefully curated to provide information without pressure. Through him, I learned that my father had been forced to downsize his business operations, that my mother had taken a part-time job for the first time in decades to help with finances, and most surprisingly, that Amanda had kept her retail position, even receiving a small promotion to assistant manager. "The family dynamics have shifted," Michael wrote, 6 months into my journey. "Without you as the safety net, they are all adapting in ways they probably should have years ago." I read his words sitting in a cafe in Kyoto, cherry blossoms drifting past the window, and felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness. This was what I had hoped would happen, but the fact that it took my complete departure to catalyze change spoke volumes about how entrenched our dysfunctional patterns had been. Occasionally, I experienced moments of doubt. During a bout of food poisoning in a small town in Vietnam, lying alone and miserable in a guest house, I longed for the comfort of familiar faces. When celebrating my 33rd birthday with strangers at a hostel in Taiwan, I felt a pang of loneliness despite their kindness. But these moments passed, and each time I emerged stronger, more confident in my ability to navigate the world independently. The woman who had spent decades being reliable for everyone else discovered she could be reliable for herself as well. Michael joined me for 2 weeks in Japan, a slightly awkward but ultimately wonderful reunion that confirmed our connection had survived the separation. We parted with promises to meet again in Europe, our relationship evolving into something different, but perhaps more balanced than before. Almost exactly 9 months after my departure, an email arrived from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read simply, "From your mother." I stared at it for a full day before finding the courage to open it. The Paris cafe buzzed with morning conversations, the clinking of espresso cups creating a soothing backdrop as I opened my laptop. A year had passed since my abrupt departure, and spring in France was as beautiful as my travel journals had promised. I had arrived 3 days ago, my 10th country on this journey of self-discovery. I sipped my coffee and logged into my email, immediately noticing a new message from Michael. We had maintained our correspondence throughout my travels, and he was planning to join me in Italy the following month. His updates from home had become less focused on my family over time, a natural evolution as my new life took precedence over the past I had left behind. Today's message, however, was different. "Your mother asked me for your email address," he wrote. "I did not give it to her, of course, respecting your privacy, but she gave me a letter to forward to you. It seems sincere, Delea. I have attached it, but only you can decide if you want to read it. No pressure either way. I support whatever you choose." The attachment sat in my inbox unopened as I ordered a second coffee and a croissant, buying time with small indulgences. The terrace had filled with Parisians and tourists alike, the spring sunshine drawing everyone outdoors after a rainy week. Finally, I clicked on the attachment, bracing myself for guilt trips or emotional manipulation. "Dear Delea," it began simply. "I hope this message finds you well and safe wherever you are. I have started this letter 100 times over the past year and discarded every attempt. What could I possibly say that would matter after everything that happened? But today I realized that perhaps the most important thing is simply to acknowledge the truth, even if it changes nothing between us." I paused, surprised by the tone. This did not sound like the mother I knew, the peacekeeper who smoothed over difficult realities with platitudes and deflection. "You were right to leave," she continued. "I have had a year to reflect on the patterns in our family, and I am deeply sorry for my role in them. Your father and I put unfair pressure on you throughout your life. We expected you to fix problems you did not create, while shielding Amanda from the consequences of her actions. We called it love, but it was not loving toward either of you. It damaged you both in different ways." My coffee grew cold as I read on, absorbing words I never expected to hear from my mother. "Our family has changed since you left. Not immediately, and not without pain. Your father was angry for months. Amanda was confused and hurt. I was simply lost. But gradually, necessity forced changes that should have happened years ago." She detailed these changes with surprising candor. My father had scaled back his business after selling properties to cover Amanda's debt. The reduced income forced my parents to adjust their lifestyle significantly. My mother had taken a part-time position at a local library, something she described as unexpectedly fulfilling. Most significantly, Amanda had kept her retail position for almost a year now, recently being promoted to department manager. She had moved into a smaller apartment within her actual budget and was taking community college courses in business management. "She is learning to stand on her own feet," my mother wrote. "It has been difficult for her, but I see a strength emerging that was always there, just never required. Your absence forced us all to grow in ways we had avoided years ago."
I just wanted you to know that your courage in leaving helped us all, though it took us too long to see it. Be well wherever you are. You are loved and missed, but more importantly, you are respected for making the choice that was right for you. I read the letter 3 times, tears blurring the screen on the final reading. Not tears of regret or homesickness, but of recognition. Something fundamental had shifted, not just in my life, but in my family's understanding. Later that afternoon, I composed a careful reply, brief but genuine, acknowledging receipt of her letter and expressing appreciation for her insights. I shared that I was safe and well, pursuing the journey I had planned for so long. I did not disclose my location or future plans, maintaining the boundaries that had become so important to my healing process, but I did leave open a small door to future communication. "I am not ready to return," I wrote, "but I am glad to hear everyone is finding their way forward. Perhaps someday we can build something new on healthier foundations." 3 days later, Michael arrived in Paris as planned, his familiar smile at the airport gate bringing a rush of joy.
We spent the afternoon at a sidewalk cafe near Notre Dame, catching up on the months since we had last seen each other in person. "Your mother showed me her letter before I forwarded it," he admitted over wine and cheese. "Hope that was okay. I wanted to make sure it would not hurt you." "It was surprisingly healing," I replied. For the first time, she actually saw me not as a resource or a solution, but as a person with my own needs and boundaries. "People can change when they have to," Michael observed, "though it usually takes something dramatic to break established patterns." "Like disappearing overnight," I said with a small smile. "Exactly like that." We spent 2 weeks together in Paris, then traveled south to the French Riviera. Our relationship had evolved into something stronger during my time away, the foundation shifting from proximity and convenience to genuine choice and deliberate connection. As we watched the Mediterranean sunset one evening, Michael asked the question that had been hovering unspoken. "Do you ever think about going back? Not to the old situation, but to see the changes for yourself?" I considered carefully before answering. "Sometimes, not out of obligation anymore, but curiosity to see these new versions of my family, to determine if the changes are genuine and sustainable. And if they are, then perhaps we could build new relationships, adult to adult, with respect and boundaries. But I am not ready yet." "You will know when you are," he said simply, his hand finding mine on the weathered wood of the boardwalk railing. The journey I had planned for a year extended to 15 months as I continued exploring Europe, occasionally joined by Michael during his vacation time. My remote work teaching English online provided sufficient income to supplement my savings, and my travel blog had developed a modest following that occasionally led to free accommodations in exchange for reviews. Throughout this time, I maintained sparse but civil communication with my mother via email. Basic life updates, no deep emotional exchanges, but no hostility either. A tentative rebuilding of trust through consistent respect of boundaries. The lessons of my journey crystallized over time, becoming clearer with distance and perspective. First, that healthy boundaries are not selfish, but essential. The constant sacrifice of self for others creates not harmony, but dysfunction. True family support should be reciprocal and respectful, not one-sided extraction. Second, that sometimes love means walking away. My departure, though painful, ultimately catalyzed positive change for everyone involved. Had I stayed and continued enabling the established patterns, we all would have remained trapped in our respective roles. Third, that self-care is not an indulgence, but a necessity. The years I spent putting myself last had not made me a better daughter or sister, but a depleted person increasingly resentful of the very people I was trying to help. Fourth, that healing sometimes requires radical change. The journey I took physically mirrored the internal distance I needed to establish, creating space to rediscover myself outside the confines of family expectations. Finally, that forgiveness does not require forgetting. I could acknowledge the positive changes in my family without erasing the history that necessitated my departure. Reconciliation, if it happened, would be based on new foundations, not pretending the past had not occurred. 18 months after my abrupt departure, I received a wedding invitation via email. Amanda was getting married to a man she had met at her community college, described by my mother as stable, kind, and financially responsible, in what seemed a deliberate contrast to her previous relationships. The invitation represented a test of sorts. Could I return for a brief visit, maintaining my boundaries while acknowledging the growth that had occurred? Was I strong enough to engage with my family on new terms without slipping back into old patterns? I have not yet decided if I will attend. The woman who fled in the night would have declined automatically, too afraid of being pulled back into the vortex of family obligation. The woman I am becoming might be strong enough to visit briefly, to observe the changes firsthand, to participate without being consumed. Either decision will be made from a position of strength rather than fear, of choice rather than obligation. That freedom, to choose based on my own needs, is perhaps the most valuable gift I gave myself when I disappeared that night. So what would you do if I were you? Would you attend the wedding as a first step to rebuilding relationships on healthier terms? Or would you maintain distance until more time has passed and new patterns are more firmly established? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear your perspective on family boundaries and reconciliation. If my story resonated with you in any way, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more real-life experiences. Sharing these stories helps others feel less alone in their struggles with family dynamics and personal boundaries. Thank you for taking this journey with me today. Remember, sometimes the most courageous act of love, both for yourself and others, is knowing when to walk away. Until next time, take care of yourself first, because you deserve that priority.